Inspiration Nation, hello, Lee Kemp here once again with Joe Neuer, and we are joined again this week by Ryan as well.
Hello.
How are you doing, Ryan?
Yeah, good, thank you.
And Joe?
Yep, all good.
Excellent.
All good to be back on the podcast. It's nice to have Ryan back, so it's great. It's always good to have that sort of freeway. I know Ryan is behind the camera. We still have a little chat, don't we, every time. It's quite nice, isn't it? And now we get him to join us.
Second one for Ryan, going on for the full show. We are again on the podcast. We are on YouTube as well. Whichever format is best for you, go and give it a look. We did last week, which we'll do sporadically, an Instagram live as well on the day we were recording. We got quite a good few follows on that, which was really good. Some good feedback to the show last week. Want to mention, as always, the Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I think that's all of them. Try and struggle with social media.
Facebook, Instagram,
YouTube as well. So what is the
Inspiration
page name?
Nation podcast
On YouTube.
Yeah.
Joe is on all those platforms at JN Coach and Tech. We are for the show at Listen to IN, Listen TOIN. We appreciate any feedback, any interaction, any comments anyone has across all those platforms. And again, if you're downloading this on streaming service, if you're watching on YouTube, please give us a like, give us a follow, leave us some reviews. We really appreciate all of that.
Yeah, perfect.
So, what are we talking about this week, Joe?
So this week we are talking about why do we have excuses. So you've probably come across this a lot. They tend to throw up excuses when we want to do things. And again, a lot of stuff we talk about has a very similar common theme. As I know before we came on the podcast, that a lot of stuff we talk about almost reframes back into whatever we're going about. So all these are really reframing things for the way we think and stuff. So I looked up a definition for it. A definition is excuse is a reason that you give in order to explain why something has been done or hasn't been done, or in order to avoid something, which I think I quite like, because
I think that last bit is probably the most prevalent bit of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think for me as well, it's like when something has been done, and I think that's almost edging on the piece of someone else's fault. I'm blaming someone else.
Yeah.
I'm putting it like, it wasn't my fault. Yeah, I did this thing, but someone told me to do it, so that's their fault. And I think there's a lot in that, and those are excuses as well. So excuses are really dangerous. I feel they're dangerous. This is my view, so you guys might think it's a bit different, but I think they're quite dangerous because, in my view, you seek to absolve. That's not a word, is it?
That's not a word.
Absolve your responsibility to a situation. Okay, so if you are going to do something and you say I can't do it, because you're making a conscious choice not to do that thing because of whatever you decided that is the thing that's going to stop you doing it, i.e. the barrier. Now, when I coach, that's a lot of the things that we have to deal with. There are so many excuses. I coach people when they want to, put things out there, and they're just they're excuses, but they're valid to them. They're totally justifiable. I'm not saying they're like these what ifs.
What they're saying
to them is genuine. I'm not saying that your excuse is not valid. It's totally valid. But this is what, once we say there's an excuse on the table, that gives us permission to go, not my responsibility, I don't have to do anything. And I think that's what I want to talk about today, really, because your excuses, I feel, will stop you getting to your big vision, getting to your big goal, getting to your aspirational vision of what you look at and what you want to do in your life. When we register that excuse with our brain, we're just telling our brain that it's okay, and we feel comfortable with that. But the problem is, as we let that go through time, as Lee was saying in the previous one, you were saying about that people like to be comfortable, and you live that comfortable life. And I'm not saying living comfortable, having that life is wrong. It's not. It's just my job, as I said last time, is to wake you up from that, to say what is. I think I believe everyone has something in that they want to express. There's some sort of talent that they have. They just haven't found it yet, or they're just not willing to put themselves out there and discover what that is. So that's what I truly believe. And the reason we don't do it is there's a lot of things like judgment and fear we talked about, but the excuses are one of those reasons. But they come from fundamental human behavioural issues, i.e., like we've talked about fear, we've talked about judgment, those types of things, and that's really what I want to talk about. So with that responsibility, I'll ask you guys, so if you don't feel responsible for anything, what's your view on that? If you feel you can just not be responsible, what's your view?
I think what you say there is right. and I see it and I'll have done it, where, like you said, a big part of excuse making is to absolve responsibility, or it's something we've talked about, is that ownership type of thing. And I think once you make an excuse, you're removing your ownership of whatever that situation is. And like you said, it's because you're putting blame onto someone else, so it's not them, it's me. Or you're doing something because you've been told to do it, so again, they've told me, I'm just doing what I was told to do. All of it is trying to take away your responsibility from either delivering on something, so doing it in advance, or because something's gone wrong. And I think, and you touched on it there, I think it goes back to, again, that kind of inbuilt safety mechanism we have, is that fear of either failure or fear of being in trouble kicks in, and that excuse making almost starts to put up those defensive barriers. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and when we go through those types of things, our brains again designed to do that, because we designed, like back in those days, I'm not going to go out because I might be eaten by Tyrannosaurus Rex or whatever. That was a legitimate fearing things in the life.
Right, I'm going to challenge your use of the word legitimate here, Joe, because people and dinosaurs didn't live at the same time.
Oh, okay.
I know that documentary, The Flintstones, that you watched, made it look
that's
like
where
that's
I got
the
it
case, but
or whatever it is. Is saber-tooth tiger? Is it? No, not even then. Would it be a tiger?
let's say an animal of some kind,
or something. What would be threatening to you? I would say, for instance, whatever it is, a bear.
Godzilla.
Can I just? I mean, I think that Godzilla didn't actually exist.
Oh, okay.
But in that film, I think it did.
Was that a film?
I think so.
Right.
Maybe.
3 of them that they've made.
3. What's your take on it? Right? What are your thoughts around excuses? And actually, I'll ask you: Have you had experience of putting excuses before doing things? Have you had any sort of what have been your personal experience?
Yeah, I think everyone's had excuses for doing things and not doing things all the time. I think people like to pre-plan their excuses in case something goes wrong, and it kind of goes back to the fear of failure thing we were talking about the other week. I think people will design an excuse in their head or have an excuse ready in their head so that if something does go wrong, or if they are challenged for doing something, then they can excuse away or explain away why that's happened or why they thought that was okay.
Do you think what that does for people, because they might not need to use those excuses, but it gives them a sense of comfort in case that situation.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Gives them a false confidence that what they're doing is protected, is guaranteed, because they have an excuse for doing it. Whether the excuse is genuine, minor, or major, or whatever the excuse is, it gives people validity that what they're doing is the right thing, and what they're doing can't be diminished. It can't be put down because they've got an excuse for doing it. There's a reason that they've done it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of that, and I actually quite like the pre-planning of the excuse, which is, I'm going to do it, but I know that if it doesn't work out, I can just put it on that.
Yeah. But again, like you said, Joe, it's a behaviour that's kind of hardwired into us, and so it's part of the point of this, where we talk about, and to use your phrase about waking people up, is trying to change that behaviour so you don't need it, because I think it can be restrictive, because it stops. If your instinct is to be able to pass the buck, you're not taking true ownership for things, and I think it's when, like we said, that kind of self-awareness and that ownership thing is where people's growth really accelerates. And I think you've got to get out of that mindset to really embrace it. I suppose to be woken up again, to nick your kind of phrase for it.
Yeah. And the reason I sort of come up with this idea for the podcast was I saw a video and there was a guy. It's the guy at Brooklyn Nine-Nine, actually.
Terry Crews.
Yes,
love Terry Crews.
Right, so
funniest man alive.
He's actually got his own. I think he's got his own. He might have his own Instagram page. But he says you could have a whole table of excuses, but you are the king of your kingdom, and you've essentially got the power to go like this. There's your table. I'm doing this drawing. For the people who are listening, I'm drawing. Now, see, Lee, if we'd had the piece of paper, I could have put a table up there.
As much as your rendition of a square block being a table would have helped people visualise this, Joe, I think we're going to have to go ahead without it.
Now, you're very true, because my drawings are actually atrocious. They are poor, so I don't think we've added much. But literally, like a table, I can literally, you have the power to do this. Literally, just go like that, and like all the objects of that table can be cleared, because you can actually clear them. That's your choice. You choose to put the excuse on the table. You can choose to take it off the table, but it's all down to your choices, and your choices are the things that lead you into whatever you want to do. So what we've got to realise is that we've got that mind or brain sort of telling us, hey, I can think of the excuse, but actually think about the energy you're using that, and the actions off the back of that pre-planned excuse will be even more limited because of the pre-planned excuse. You may not care as much about the outcome because of that excuse. You've got to guarantee,
in a corner almost,
because you're not going to take the brunt of the responsibility. So that means you're not going to take as much action or be full on with that as you would have done. There might be a lot of reasons for that, because one, as you talked about before, if you're in maybe a toxic environment, someone's telling you what to do, and you might not believe in the thing that they want you to do, but you have to do it anyway. So there's that type. So in that situation, if I was coaching someone in that situation, I would seek to say you need to go and chat with that person and confront that, i.e. challenge that, because if you have to be brought into things for you to take action. And if you're a leader, and Lee, you can, and I know yourself, Ryan, you're in that sort of that phase of your career where you're going on that path, is that we need to be, as leaders, be aware of that. In terms of, you probably felt it yourself. I know I've had that in the past where I haven't believed in the vision or whatever, and I've done that. I've said, well, that's because
you've
of
distanced
that.
yourself from it.
Yeah. Where what I should have done is taken control, and we talk about control, and the thing we can control is us, and how we can go, well, I don't agree with that. How can I approach this person or these people to say, these are the reasons I think this is going to have issue? Is there any way we can, construct it in a way which I can be bought into, in which case it's going to have the best outcome? Of course, it's not a perfect world. It could be a toxic environment, in which case then you have to make your choice on whether you want to stay in that environment. Okay? Again, if that's the excuse because you don't like the environment, then you've got the choice to come out.
Change that.
And we've talked about that in the previous podcast, about the things that I've done to come out of environments that I needed to come out of to grow. Hence we're here today talking about excuses. And Terry Crews, I really love that. You are the king of your court. You can essentially go, I can clear that out. You can tell people to get out of your court, because the things that you and your internal world is the thing that you have ultimate control of. No one else has. Yes, people can influence you, but ultimately you can decide whether you're going to accept that, whether you're going to take that or not, and that's entirely on you. And I think more we can accept responsibility for those type of things, and being conscious about, if we have an excuse, why are we having that excuse, and challenging that excuse, and why are we putting that excuse on the table, and are there legitimate reasons in this excuse? Am I absolving my responsibility, or am I just sort of edging a little bit into saying, I want that as a safety net for me, a safety net, so I can go, hey, that don't work out, and I can blame Lee for that, it's all right, because Lee told me to do it, and like you said before. And I really like the thing about the pre-planned excuse. I actually didn't think of that, but the pre-planning, and it's all right, I can just go, but you're not going to go forward, so I really like that. Have you got any more sort of thoughts around that after I've talked about that? Because what are your thoughts around any of that?
No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there with it, and it's the Terry Crews example, and it's that conscious thought in your head that you're in control of these things, and the more you're making excuses, the more you're limiting your control of the situation, your responsibility in it, and your part in whatever those outcomes are.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I say this from a place that I can look back and I know I've done it in the past, and there's certain times it sticks with me in my head, and when you start thinking of the past and stuff, and there's times when I've made excuses and it makes me cringe now to look back at it, because it doesn't actually help people. People don't generally buy your excuses if you're making excuses. It just starts to create an arena of conflict, or a place where people see you don't take ownership, and generally that's not what people are looking for in other people.
Yeah, I'll go deeper with that. Like, if you deliver an excuse, people may not, they might say, oh, okay, but in the back of their mind, say, that's an excuse, and they won't tell you, and that's affecting their perception of you and what you can deliver. So even if you don't hear about it, and you are that sort of I'm not saying person, we're all different, we have to, and I've done the same. I've done excuses, I've definitely done it. Trying to think of a sort of recent-ish one. Well, you just like the coaching stuff that I do, I've made myself, I can't do that, I'm going to be judged, or I ain't got time. Oh, that's a big one.
That's a good one.
I'll tell you what, I'm carrying that one, because that is something I hear a lot, and I think actually Lee and I have really talked about it a lot, haven't we? And I still hear it today. It's like, I ain't got time to do it. Anyway, have you any thoughts on that? Because I don't want to.
No, I agree.
I can hear you got some flow on this.
the favourite quote I've pulled out from all the shows we've done so far is the one that says, I no longer refer to myself as busy, I refer to myself as productive, which I think if anything was going to sum up the message, or I was going to say for us, but certainly for me, if there's anything in terms of, like you said, about waking people up, that's the message I'd love to be able to wake everyone up to, is to get out of this funk of being busy, which is a complete self-imposed kind of cage on people, and turn that into being productive. Just framing yourself that everything you do is moving you closer to something, rather than everything you do being portrayed as a barrier to getting to where you want to. But you don't get anywhere if you do nothing.
Yeah. And the time one.
But that is the biggest. Is I haven't got time is the number one excuse when everyone is, to a larger or lesser degree, in control of their time.
Well, have you got 24 hours in a day?
Yes.
Have you got 24 hours in a day?
I do.
Have I got 24 hours in a day? Right. So let's look at some really super successful people. People you mentioned last week in the podcast. Elon Musk. Has he got 24 hours in a day? Yes, he has. Yes. What has he done with his time? Well, pretty impressive, isn't it? I'm just looking at it thinking, well, he's launched a space program. He's launched things into space.
Something to do with cars, I think, as well.
Tesla. We can give them a shout out. I mean, it's impressive, isn't it?
But he's got no more time than we've got.
His background literally started from nothing. Started from absolutely nothing. Like, he probably started less than what we have when we started this.
And all these, like you said, all these success, especially in the entrepreneurial spaces where we lean to, are all people that at one point or another didn't have the means to an extent do what they want. Yeah. They had to start, like you said, from nothing, or with whatever they started with. At some point, they had a day job and they had dreams, and they invested their time in their dreams rather than being too busy to do things. And I think it's the same in the workspace. Some people get on really well. Some people will almost to an extent hold themselves back, but again, when you narrow it down to your whatever job you're in, 7, 8, 9 hours at work, again, you've all got that same time. It's how you choose to use that. And I think the second you become too busy is the second you start boxing yourself in.
Yeah, and I go back to like Evan Carmichael was saying, you can schedule for your success. You can schedule it in. So let's talk about it. Right? Let's talk. So why is it you think that people sort of throw up the time issue? What do you think? What are your views on it? Because I know I've just got one that I want to throw out there.
What do you think, Ryan? Because I've got a thought there, but I didn't want to jump in.
I think people are making the excuse that they're busy a lot of the time because they don't want to do what the task is.
And why don't you think they want to do what the task is?
Well, it depends on what the task is, isn't it? I mean,
what do you think of sort of majority? What do you think the underlying thing is in your view?
They're not as invested in the idea as the person that's brought the idea to them.
Yeah.
Whether it's professional or kind of social. If they don't like the idea of what's been brought to them, they'll think of any excuse they can. And I think the easy excuse you can think of is I'm too busy.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was going to say. And your question is, I think I'm busy is the easy answer. It's so subjective. It's not quantifiable. You can't really challenge it. You can just.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're too busy.
Yeah. Fine.
And I love that. And one of my thought on this is that it could be about like you said, Brian. It could be about you're not invested in the idea. You don't like the idea, but you're going to you've been told to do it, whatever. And there's a certain thing around leadership and being told you need to go and do certain things at certain times. My thing is around this, like for personal development, which is my space in it. I suppose I do talk to entrepreneurials as well, but my space is more around as well, like the personal development. Like I want you to think about your personal development, and when I talk about you as a person, is that your reason is not strong enough for you to do your thing, whatever that reason is. So your reason's got to be stronger than you, that time element. So the question I like is when I see people ain't got time for this, like they want to go out and do, I don't know, like a business. Like I had one the other day, I went to a wedding, and this person I spoke to, they were in a family butcher's, right? And they said, I don't really like it. It's not really my cup of tea, but I do it because it's that comfortable thing.
Yeah,
right? It's that comfortable thing. And
they were expected to because it's a family business.
Yeah, and I was talking to okay, so, and I was saying, no, because I'm terrible like this, so if you ever talk to me in a social space, I love talking about coaching. I talk about coaching 24 hours a day, I dream about it. Do I dream about it? Yeah, I probably do dream about it. But I talk about it, do videos about it all the time, and when I go to even like places, I like to talk about it. So if you're going to come and talk to me, you're guaranteed to be talking about coaching at some point in our conversation. And the conversation went a bit like this. I don't really like the butcher. I'm not really into the butchery thing because you're a butcher. I didn't realise it's a family business. It's easy. I'm a bit bored with it. So I said, what is it that you want to do? And he said, well, I love taking photos. So what's that with the photos? And I really like it, but I don't really have the time to come up with the business. It says, what could you start doing? So I started almost falling into that conversation. What could you start doing?
Yeah.
Anyway, went on for about 20 minutes, and I was trying to, in that 20 minutes, I was trying to push them a little bit because I got a feeling that they just needed a little bit of a nudge. So we talked about it, and I talked about how I use Instagram, about putting a video out there, and that you could do the same with the photos, just to get like literally. So one excuse was, I need a great camera. Do you really need a great camera? Could you take a photo now? What could you use? Mobile phone. The mobile phones now, their cameras, in my view, no, actually I was right actually, but literally something like they're better than the cameras they were like 5, 6. Like the quality is ridiculously amazing. Even I've got an iPhone, and when I take photos, the ones I put on my blog are the photos that I take, and I'm not a photographer, but I just take them and I just post them. So I could use that and take a photo now. And his wife was standing there and said, "You take amazing photos. Your photos are excellent." So I was saying, well, if you love it, I'd love to see an Instagram page, right? I ain't really got the time. I said, well, do you love it? He says, yeah, I do love it. So you're going to do it. You're going to process. So I'd like to see this. If you go and create this Instagram account, I will like it, and I will go and have a look, and I will look at your photos, and I will support it. Anyway, we went back, and I've worked with his wife, and so Monday come round, and I had a feeling about this, and I said, have we got an Instagram account? No, we haven't. So there's a person who's created an excuse, that wants to do it, but says, like, I haven't got the time, I haven't got the equipment. And I could feel that if I had another 20 minutes with them, I think I would probably sit with them and say, okay, let's create the account.
Do it together.
Let's create the account. And that's how I would coach them. Let's sit together. So once they got that first step, you're then eliminating the excuse. We're getting rid of the equipment, because you don't need amazing equipment to take amazing photos. You could start, because if you're good at photos, you've got an eye for it. You've got the sort of feel for it, and it's not about talking about perfection again and all those sorts of conversations. So that's really where it came from.
You said that's almost, and a bit likening back to last week's episode, but they're using that perfection bit and again, they genuinely believe it, but it's an excuse to not doing it. I was trying to think from that episode, Joe, of a corny segue into doing a prompt for your website, but if I'm honest, I don't need a corny web promotion, because I think that example there is exactly what you do. And I would strongly encourage anyone who wants